Hello, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the South Kingstown Town Council. It is Monday, July 22nd. The time is 7:30. Our first order of business is the pledge to the flag. Please rise and join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And now the roll call, please.
Council President Collins.
Here.
Council Vice President DeCruz.
Here.
Councilwoman Kelso.
Here.
Councilman McAtee.
Here.
Councilman Bailey.
Here.
All members present.
Thank you. Item 4 is the approval of minutes of previous meetings.
Motion to approve 4A and B.
Second.
So moved. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And that motion carries. Item 5 is the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion that we approve item 5, the consent agenda.
Second.
So moved. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And that motion carries as well. And it brings us to item 6, licenses. 6A is a resolution granting a victualling license to Cantina Del Rio of South Kingstown, doing business as Cantina Del Rio, of 515 Kingstown Road in Wakefield, application by Ramon Michel, member 9 Belfort Avenue, Warwick.
Good evening, members of the council. I'm Giovanni Laterra Bellina, and I represent Cantina Del Rio of South Kingstown, LLC, and I have with me the managing member, Ramon Michel.
Welcome.
And Panayotis Draculis from Anchor Pete's.
We're here on behalf of Cantina Del Rio seeking the transfer of the Class B victual license that Anchor Pete's LLC has presently. We're seeking...
I just need to interrupt because that's going to be a public hearing, and you are on the victualling license. So no, it's fine. You should stay there. Let's just talk about the victualling license first, then we'll get into the public hearing on the liquor license transfer. Thank you.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about, what you're going to be offering, the hours.
Yeah. The hours, it's going to be Monday through Sunday. I believe it's Sunday through Thursday will be through 10 p.m., and it'll be closing on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at 11 p.m. Mr. Michel has over 25 years of experience in operating as a restaurateur. In fact, he has another location of a separate corporate entity operating Cantina Del Rio on West Shore Road in Warwick. They've been operating for just about a year now. Incredibly successful Mexican restaurant, and they're hoping to carry that forward to this current location. We recently entered into a lease agreement with the landlord, and they've been doing extensive work. I don't know if you guys have had an opportunity to pass by, but a lot of time and money and expense have been put into getting that developed. If you'd like to, I'll have Mr. Michel explain a little bit about the type of fare and clientele that he has there.
Please do.
Hi. Ramon Michel. Like Giovanni say, I've been in business for 25 years. Used to have a chain of restaurants back in Indianapolis. Sold the restaurants back 6 years ago. My kids grew up in the business. Now my kids, they're old enough to carry the business. Now they're asking me to, why we don't start the same thing what we did in the past. So my family and I, we've been running this restaurant in Warwick for the past year. We've been real successful. We never have problems with it, but sell it to minors. Mr. Mayor is there every weekend. So, it's a family-oriented restaurant. We cater more about families. There's no after parties. We close at 10 o'clock. We could keep the last call 10 minutes later. We out of there at 10:30. So pretty much is what we do.
Any questions for...
No questions. I mean, I'm excited to see another restaurant coming into town. The fact that you were successful in the past and you have 25 years of experience, I think that'll go over well.
Thank you.
Yes. All right, do I hear a motion on 6A?
Motion to approve 6A.
Second?
So moved. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries. Don't go anywhere, really, because we're coming right back to you. We've come to item 7, which is public hearings. 7A is a public hearing relative to an application for transfer of a license to keep and sell alcoholic beverages in South Kingstown in accordance with the general laws of 1956, as amended as follows. Transfer of a Class B victualler liquor license from Anchor Pete's LLC, doing business as Anchor Pete's, by Panagiotis Trikulis, member 515 Kingstown Road, Wakefield, Rhode Island, to Cantina Del Rio of South Kingstown LLC, doing business as Cantina Del Rio, by Ramon Michel, member 515 Kingstown Road, Wakefield, for the dining rooms and bar area, and is further defined in a site plan dated June 18th, 2019, on file in the town clerk's office. Said license is contingent upon the issuance of a certificate of good standing from the Rhode Island Division of Taxation, filing of a certificate of insurance evidencing required liability coverage, compliance with all town ordinances and regulations, the payment of any municipal taxes and user fees and arrears to the town, the correction of any fire code violations, and the satisfaction of all claims. And before we can...
I have
Dale?
some communications. I have a communication dated June 26, 2019, from Gregory A. Mancini from Sinapi Law Associates on behalf of their client, Rhode Island Distributing, objecting to the proposed liquor license transfer due to indebtedness to Rhode Island Distributing in the amount of $4,347.53. Another one, again, from Gregory Mancini, Sinapi Law Associates, on behalf of their client, Horizon Beverage, opposing the transfer due to indebtedness to Horizon Beverage in the amount of $1,393.78. And the third communication dated July 18th, 2019, from Denise M. Silva, credit manager of McLaughlin and Moran, objecting to the proposed transfer due to indebtedness to McLaughlin and Moran in the amount of $1,470.32. That's it.
Thank you.
We're aware of each one of those objections, and just so that the council knows that the parties, Anchor Pete's LLC and Cantina Del Rio of South Kingstown LLC, have entered into a purchase and sale agreement of assets, and the proceeds from that sale will be used to satisfy all of those outstanding obligations from the distributors.
Is that satisfactory?
And the motion, if you adopt this, does include reference to satisfaction of all claims. That would be a contingency.
Okay. All right. So any further information you care to present at the public hearing, please do.
None at this time, thank you.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant from council members?
Does your restaurant in Warwick also have alcohol service?
Yes, we do. We have a full bar,
Okay.
and it's pretty much the same size, the same capacity. We sit by 180 people, and I think we're going to sit the same by 180 people.
And your previous restaurants as well had
Yeah,
alcohol?
all the restaurants they used to have back in Indianapolis, there was three-way license, a full bar.
Thank you.
So currently, there are some sanctions or some modifications to that liquor license that we put on.
Anchor Pete's, right.
How will we address those?
Well, those should not be applicable to a transferee. What would happen is that I hear that he's asking for until 11 o'clock on weekends, as opposed to, I think, 10 was the time you had placed on Anchor Pete's. I would say this: you obviously have the same powers to bring in the owner of the business if there are issues going forward, but there's no track record of problems for this transferee here in South Kingstown. And I assume if he was in business for 25 years, he has a track record, so.
Right, so I'd like to see us take that liquor license, revert back to what it was prior to the sanctions we put on. So I would like to see a level playing field, so if every other business in town is able to serve to 1 o'clock without any restrictions, I would like to see this liquor license go to Cantina del Rio with the same level of ability.
They would have that legal right, but perhaps ask the applicant, because I heard 11.
Correct, but you know,
Understood.
things happen, and I don't want to tie the applicant's hands needlessly.
Thanks, Deb. Any other questions?
Is there any connection between Anchor Pete's and the applicant?
No, sir.
Thank you.
When is the purchase and sales closing date for the purchase and sales?
It's contingent upon this transfer and one other item. The plan would be is that we would close after the appeal period is passed, and then we'd likely be able to move forward with an opening very shortly thereafter.
All right.
I agree with Deb's rationale in terms of making sure your hands aren't tied. We put those sanctions in place for a reason, but I think the business should be treated like every other business in town.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to just open up the floor to public comment. If there's anybody who would like to come forward at this point, who has opinion on this matter, please rise and speak now. All right. Seeing none, do I hear a motion to close this public hearing?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second. Oops.
So moved. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And that public hearing is closed. And now we need a motion on it.
So the motion can be to approve on public hearing item A. What I don't know, Dale, is in their application, what time did they ask for? Because if not, or as part of the motion in approving public hearing A, you can specifically state that the liquor license will be valid till 1 a.m. Each evening.
The application is midnight.
The application's midnight?
Yes.
Okay, so it's up to you. You can plug in whatever time you want to plug in.
We got from 9 a.m. to 12 a.m.
Midnight.
Yeah.
Well, let's, who wants to make a
Need a
motion?
motion first?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve public hearing, agenda item 7A, contingent upon the issuance of a certificate of good standing from the Rhode Island Division of Taxation, filing of a certificate of insurance evidencing required liability coverage, compliance with all town ordinances and regulations, the payment of any municipal taxes and user fees and arrears to the town, the correction of any fire code violations, and the satisfaction of any claims. That's my motion.
Don't want to touch the hour of the...
Add the extension, the removal of the sanction.
I don't think we need to, right?
We
No.
don't have to say anything about the
Right.
sanctions. It only applied to Anchor Pete's.
Okay,
He plays now, well, I should wait for a second.
I'll second that.
Okay. I think my opinion is he plays now under the same rules as any applicant
Correct.
that gets granted a license.
And currently, their application was until midnight, right?
One on file with you, yes.
Okay.
All right. So we have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion on this item? Just clarification, so, they're planning on being open till midnight, So their liquor license will allow them to sell alcohol until...
That is correct.
Very good. All right, any further discussion?
Yeah, go ahead.
All in favor, say aye.
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 That motion carries. Good luck.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Can't wait.
Public hearing 7B is a public hearing to consider proposed amendments to Police Department standing orders relative to use of force, oleurosin capsicum spray, police baton, conducted electrical weapon, or taser, weapons, caliber, ammunition and safety, vehicular pursuit, and limits of authority as shown on Exhibit 1 attached to the agenda.
I can't
Welcome, Chief.
pronounce that either.
Makes me feel better.
These, Chief Joe Jaber, South Kingstown Police. Good evening, everyone. These policies are all in our format at the present time. These are just slight amendments that we have to impose to head in that direction of accreditation. So basically, the policies are the same in every accredited department. So we have to adjust a few things to be okay with our department to fit into accreditation. So there are 7 policies. The first one is limits of authority. It's basically constitutional law. That's the ever-changing landscape of arrest, search and seizure, and searching vehicles, searching homes, and how the police are guided and how to search, how to treat people, how to treat everyone fairly, whether to make an arrest or not make an arrest. So that's a pretty standard situation with all departments, and we have to keep current with the present case law and any recommendations made by our insurance company, the trust. The second policy is lethal force, which could also be called deadly force or less than lethal. Officers need to be trained when they need to use deadly force or lethal force, and that requires they be trained on a yearly basis, which they are. Also, after the lethal force training, they need to also be trained in the 3 other policies, which would be OC spray, that's the easy way to say it, capstun, police baton, and taser. So the only wording change there is that all of these weapons need to be, the officers need to be trained in the use of these weapons, when they can use them and when they can't. Some examples of that would be you couldn't use a taser if the person's in the presence of explosive materials. The taser couldn't be used if you know that that person has a bad heart or something, something of that manner. So those 3, and then the other 2 policies, one deals with pursuit policies. We just removed a couple of sections of the pursuit policy, which is, excuse me, we removed the use of roadblocks because we don't have that, we don't do that here, and no one, actually the state, I don't think anyone in the state is really trained in using roadblocks, and they create a whole different issue. So we've taken that out of our policy. Also, we've removed tire deflation devices because we don't have those and we don't use them. So and then the last policy is the weapons policy, and the only change there is that last year we were in transition from the P226 357 to the P329 millimeter. Now that transition has been made, all of the officers have the new weapons, which carry more rounds and are more accurate, and are the result of a lot of police officers shooting a lot better. So that's basically what we're doing, what we're changing here, and this is all in the process to become accredited, so if anyone has any questions.
How far away are we from being accredited?
I knew I was going to get that. I'll put the heat on
All right.
Janet over there.
Can't wait. You, to the mic, please.
I'm hoping to be able to,
Tell them who you are.
oh, Lieutenant Gardner, South Kingstown Police Department. I'm hoping to be able to have the executive director from RIPAC set up a meeting. I'm hoping to be able to request it within a month or so. She's looking over about 3 or 4 of the chapters now. I've given her access to that. And mainly what I'm doing now, besides waiting for these to be approved, is doing proofs, which is a lot of getting pictures and going through previous logs and incident reports. So hopefully within the next month, we'll be able to schedule a date, and that's depending on when they have a date available.
The problem there are other departments that are under the deadline, so they're all applying as well. So it's difficult to get the entire team here to assess us. You know, they just have to get volunteers and people that are accredited to be, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, the assessors are people like myself, accreditation managers from other departments. So they, especially in the summer, that's been tough to get 3 to 5 people each time for a mock assessment and then a full assessment.
Thank you.
Sounds like the end might be in sight, though. That's good.
Oh,
Congratulations.
Thank you all for your sticking to it. It's been a long journey.
it's been a long journey, and Lieutenant Gardner, who is a recent promotion from sergeant to lieutenant, and
Congratulations.
our first female lieutenant.
Congratulations.
Did a great job.
Any other questions for the chief? All right. Well, at this point, I'll open it up for comments from the public, if there are any. On this matter, please.
Like I've always said, it's always a good idea to come to the council meetings because something always comes up that's important. My name's Bob Traeger, lived here for quite a while. I migrated from Providence, I don't know when now, it's 76, I guess. And I'm here for another reason, but I'll talk at public forum. But this particular thing that has been done in South Kingstown doesn't surprise me because this town is usually ahead of the curve, trying to look at what's around them and what's been happening in our not too far away places, and maybe even some very close places I'm not sure of. I don't read those clips in the paper. But I think this was an extremely important undertaking that shows that the town of South Kingstown cares about what it's doing and how it's confronting the public. And I don't think anything is more important today than that. And that's about it. I'm just pleased that I came, just because I might not have found out about this if I didn't come. Okay, I could have watched it. But I was wide awake enough today to get over here, so I'm here. Anyway, that was a good thing, and the police department's on the right track. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments, do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing. Sorry.
Second.
So moved. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And that motion carries. Do I hear a motion on 7B?
I'll make a motion to approve 7B.
Second.
So moved. Further discussion? Just say thanks to the chief and Lieutenant Gardner, everybody else who's worked on this. I know it's been many years in the making. All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries. 7C is a public hearing to consider proposed amendments to the South Kingstown zoning ordinance, Article 1, Establishment of Districts and Official Zoning Map, Article 6, Overlay Zones, Special Zones, and Special Management Districts, and Article 12, Definitions relative to coastal community building height, character, and resiliency, as shown on Exhibit 2 attached to the agenda. There's something to read from the planning board, I imagine.
I have a communication dated June 27th, 2019, to the honorable members of the Town Council from the Planning Board, requesting the council to adopt, or recommending that the council adopt the amendments as provided on Exhibit 2, and incorporating findings of fact, consistency with the comprehensive plan, and findings of fact, consistency with the purposes of zoning.
Thank you.
Good evening, councilors. My name is Jay Parker. I'm senior planner in the planning department. Hopefully, this will be the last revision of this ordinance. Over the last few months, the planning board has worked really diligently in trying to address some of the prior suggestions the council had, and true to form, the state made some last-minute changes that made it additionally challenging. So, as you're aware, on February 25th, 2019, the zoning amendment was approved with a number of standards that were developed with input from the planning board in an attempt to preserve community resiliency and the character. The amendment that was adopted included a clause that sunsetted the ordinance and basically expired it in September 1st, 2019. The purpose of that ordinance was to preserve public health, to promote resiliency in flood-prone areas, and the intent of it was also to maintain consistency with the state law while preserving character. Back during the public hearing, the conclusion of the public hearing, the council made several suggestions for the planning board to consider. Those considerations were for the hard limit on building heights, the architectural standards and design specifications that were previously incorporated, and also inquire about creating a grandfathering provision for applicants that were well underway. On this slide, we'll basically show you what's been done over the last few months. As you can see, on March 12th, the planning board began discussing this topic just about 2 weeks after the hearing was, the ordinance was previously adopted. We went through 4 work sessions in total, March 12th, April 9th, May 14th, and June 11th. And at their June 25th combination workshop regular meeting, they issued a recommendation on it, on these amendments. Through that time period, members of the public attended the planning board meetings. They participated in the discussions. There was a significant amount of discussion, as you can imagine, on the architectural design elements and some of those things where we really weren't sure if we were in the right territory or not. In the end, the planning board determined that there really was no good answer or no good reason to maintain those standards in the ordinance. We couldn't come to an agreement on what should apply, what shouldn't, and we resulted in eliminating a considerable amount of them. So in the first suggestion that was presented in regard to the hard limit on building heights, we set about and ended up revising the building height limitations considerably. We eliminated the 25-foot and 18-foot height maximums and also the corresponding first and second story limits to structures. And we focused on developing a building height limitation that was based on elevation above existing grade, which would match with what we have in our current zoning. This table is a reflection of what we've come up with. Essentially, at 0 to 5 feet in elevation building would be allowed to go to 35 feet. That would get you to a maximum height above grade of 35 to 40 feet. There's a range there because there's a exception in the definition for building height that allows for additional freeboard to be used, and it was not counted against a project. Moving down the table, you see the properties elevated from 5 to 10 feet above grade would have a slightly reduced height of 30 feet. Again, keeping the exact same height range as what was approved previously. And continuing down to, all the way down to greater than 15. You can see that those are all consistent with the way that we do it currently, or that we had done it previous to the prior amendment. There's an asterisk on the bottom, on that bottom row. That's because for properties that are greater than 20 feet in elevation, you will get a building that will be greater than 40 feet in height. However, there really is no good way of coming up with a method to control that. Then you start dabbling back into the area that we were before, where we didn't feel comfortable, and actually reducing those height levels down to an unusable amount. However, I went through the data today, and these areas are really in select areas. Probably only would affect 40 structures, maybe probably less. And the likelihood that somebody would want to elevate a structure taller than what the building actually is going to be is probably not realistic. It's a possibility, but again, it's one of those things where we couldn't come up with a perfect solution for it, and this was the best approach we could find. This is an example of the simplified calculation. Here you can see a property elevated to 10 feet, has a building height of 25, resulting in 35 feet. The same for a property elevated at 15. It has a 20-foot building height, keeping everything at 35. Moving on, in regard to the architectural and design specifications, like I said, all of these were pretty much eliminated from the ordinance. The 60-40 split of the first and second story areas, increased side yard setbacks, the roof pitch limitations, setbacks on encroachment allowances, requirements of articulation in vertical walls, requirements that entrances be serviced by porches, decks, and landings, and the second story setbacks in relation to the first floor footprint. We also spent a fair amount of time on a grandfathering provision. What came out of that was language that allows for projects that have received a CRMC preliminary determination or a DEM OWTS approval on or before February 28, 2019. The planning board and staff excuse me, felt that that was more than satisfactory because it indicated commitment of an applicant, that they were actually going through the process and they're committed to seeing the project through. With that said, the planning board provided an advisory recommendation on June 27th. True to form, the state revised the building height definition after after we spent more than a year, or just about a year, working on amendments to the ordinance. The definition that was changed, however, worked in our favor this time. It actually blended pretty well with the ordinance language that we came up with. The revision reverts to measuring building height from average existing grade, which is a traditional approach used throughout the state. The new component of that was that the elevated area beneath the building would be exempt from building height calculations. The new definition also, to our advantage, limits the use of the CRMC maps to only the 3-foot SLR map. Previously, it was a general reference to the CRMC maps, which included the 0, 2, 3, 5, 7, and 10. The 5, 7, and 10 scenarios were the extremely elevated scenarios. And the bill was signed on July 8th. When we got word that that bill was getting passed, we went back and reviewed it and compared it against the drafts that we had and realized that there were some amendments that we needed to make on the fly to make sure that it blended appropriately and was effective. The first amendment provides a minor clarification of requirements when using a CRMC design map does not exceed allowances with state building code. That is a little confusing. I really was hesitant about describing it to not confuse anybody. But essentially, the building code regulations allow you to go from 1 to incorporate 5 feet of freeboard. If somebody goes above 5 feet, they would be subject to the coastal resiliency portion of our ordinance and not the special flood hazard area. Amendment 2 essentially preserves the same language that was initially proposed. It was just restructured for clarity and effectiveness. Amendment 3 incorporates the same building height limitations within the coastal resiliency overlay district as those within the special flood hazard overlay district for clarity and consistency. That previously didn't appear to be an issue, but when we went back and looked at the way that the building height definition had changed, we realized that if a property was outside of a special flood hazard area and in a coastal resiliency area, the way the language of the state law read, they would exempt anything beneath a 35-foot tall structure. So you would end up getting possibly a 45-foot tall structure next to 35-foot structures in the flood zone, which wasn't consistent with existing zoning or consistent with the flood hazard overlay district that was presented. Finally, Amendment 4 replaces the current building height definition in the zoning ordinance with the language that was approved back in July.
Thank you.
And then real quick, in summary, the planning board recommendations and staff suggestions simplify the regulatory components. We have that new building height calculation that's consistent and definitely more easy to comprehend. The only thing we did keep is the gross floor area calculation that ensures that the size of structures are commensurate with the parcel size. And we eliminated pretty much all of the design specifications and architectural standards previously adopted. And with that, just about sums it up. I think the planning board worked really hard on this, as did staff, and I think we are in agreement that it blends very well with what we were trying to achieve and consistent with the law that was recently passed.
Thank you, Jay. Questions at this point from the council?
No questions.
All right, guess you did a good job. Thank you. At this point, is there anybody who would like to speak on this from the public?
Jim O'Neill, Matunic. I spent a lot of time in the last few years up at the State House, but a lot of this hard work was done by Representative Carol McEntee. I wish you only could understand what goes on up there, from committee levels to get things to the floor, work with lobbyists, etc. But she, specifically she, Joe Shekarchi, majority leader up there for the Democrats, but what they accomplish here made the hard work done by our planning board here possible. So I think a lot of thanks goes to Carol McEntee, and she's promised to continue on this. But what goes on up there, you can only imagine. Everybody has their own desires, and she really worked incredibly hard on behalf of Narragansett and South Kingstown. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comments? All right, very good. Do I hear a motion to close the public hearing then?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
So moved. All in favor, say aye.
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 That motion carries. And do I hear a motion on public hearing 7C?
I'll make a motion to approve 7C.
So I'm going to ask that you add to that motion. So the motion is going to be approve 7C together with the amendments that were provided to you by the senior planner, Jay Parker, in his memo to the council dated July 19th, 2019, as discussed at the public hearing, and further, that your motion is based on the recommendation of the Planning Board dated I just have to get the date for you. Is it there? I just want to get the right date, that's all.
June 27th.
Thank you. Okay, back to the motion. We're going to refer to the recommendation of the Planning Board to the Council dated June 27, 2019, specifically incorporating and adopting the findings of fact, consistency with the comprehensive plan, the findings of fact and consistency with the purposes of zoning, those are the two.
Second.
I just want to make sure that we had that sort of motion
Yeah,
corroborated by
with the additional language as specified by Mike Ursullo, Town Solicitor.
Second.
All right, very good. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this item? I do want to thank Representative McEntee for her work on this at the State House. Certainly, that law has been improved and is now more in favor of our current policy. Appreciate all the work that the Planning Board and the Planning Department did. We saw the number of meetings that they've just had since we first saw this ordinance. So that's a lot of work, and we appreciate it very much. So, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries. And that brings us to the end of our public hearings and to communications, which are all CA. So that brings us to item 9, comments from interested citizens. This is your opportunity, Bob, to get up and tell us. Okay. Or if somebody else wants to get up and beat you to the podium.
Oh, what brings Bobby over here tonight, right? Well, I couldn't help it. It had nothing to do with, I'm glad we had that little segment about our police department looking at and caring about what's going on. I don't know how I'm going to do this exactly. I'm not going to do it for long. I'm going to try to be as short as I possibly can. Recently, well, let's put it this way. What if everybody in here, we all had our financial situation completely in control. We would be able to do more or less what we needed to do to take care of our lives. We'd be able to, generally be happy with our lives. But does this circumstance make it okay to disparage groups of our population, to make statements about people that have been elected officials by their communities, who have campaigned and told the people in the communities why they're running, like you have done? And yet, in this country, today, it's beyond, I'll tell you, it's so far out of my realm of belief that the people, and I'm not talking about the one that said the things about these people, of calling them, I guess the news media calls them the squad too. I think it's a negative connotation. But I just cannot believe that people would sit and listen to this dialogue in our country that is made up of immigrants. We're all in this room. There might be one Indian in here that I don't know about, but generally, we're all immigrants. My ancestry, my grandfather came over here in 1909 from Sweden. Don't know exactly why, but I know they had a good life here. He was an engine turner and an engraver. And I think there's millions of stories. And yet, we can tell people that say something we don't like about our situation to go back, why don't you go back to your own country? And then people start chanting this, accepting this dialogue. It scares the hell out of me. It really does. Even though we live in the cocoon that we live in here in South Kingstown. And if it isn't a cocoon, I don't mind anybody telling me why it isn't. Because I want to learn. I want to learn from people's opinions. And I think we need to do something about this. I think this group in front of me should do something about it. You know those resolutions you talk about when you make resolutions to different communities and different segments of our state? Well, we ought to make a resolution to condemn that kind of dialogue, and we can't be silent about it. And I think this country is pretty damn silent about it right now. I think that's what scares me. It isn't the person doing it. He's completely ignorant, and he has no concept of right and wrong. And when you have somebody like that, you can forgive them. But all the people that share this type of dialogue, are they all on that same boat? That's what scares me. And I'll tell you, I've said it before in a different way in front of you before. Too bad I can't get on the internet and do all that stuff, but it's just not in my DNA. But this is the only spot I get to do it. So I'm done with it, but I'm not done with it in the sense that it plagues my mind that this is going on in the United States of America. Never seen it all the almost 80 years that I've been looking at it. Never have I ever witnessed this type of ignorant talk and acceptance of it.
Thank you, Mr. Traeger. Other public comment?
Okay. Jim O'Neill, Matunic. I was looking at the manager's report, miscellaneous items this evening, and I saw Councilwoman Kelso's son-in-law has already been hired. And I have a question why we have a ethics opinion from Ursulo's office, but why that wasn't done originally when he was hired. I don't know the date that he was hired, but why wasn't that done at that particular time? I know the manager has a right to hire and fire, but the council has a right to certainly ask questions of any candidate for any office. Goes with the territory. And it's not a question of whether or not he has a right to be appointed to the office here, but the question comes up that I think you all know by now how many grievances, how many people, staff members we've lost here at Town Hall over the last year, and there's been a real problem within the halls of South Kingstown's government. This is not healthy, certainly very much not healthy. And now to appoint, and ingratiating himself with the other members of the town council, to have hired Ms. Kelso's son-in-law. It's a very uncomfortable situation, given the history of what has gone on here at Town Hall. The other thing, I don't know if I have to ask for a copy of the resume or APRA. Do I have to go through an APRA situation, Mike, for a copy of that? Okay, okay. I appreciate that. The other thing is, with the 4 people who I know that have left in the last year, from Josh Rosen, Doug McLean, Chelsea Seifert, and now Trish Sunderland, although she's still working for us, I don't know why we don't have exit interviews. And I mean serious ones amongst a committee you could form, 2 or 3 of you. I don't understand this. We could learn so much. I mean, take a look at somebody like Trish Sunderland now. She's still working for us, comes in now and then on weekends, evenings, signs checks. And she should have been the one to interview the son-in-law, Mrs. Kelso. It might have been very helpful. Is he the right person? Has he worked for a town or city before in the municipal levels? A lot of vetting could have taken place on a timely basis here. And that's just not fair to what has gone on here in the last year. Again, vetting is very important, but also exit strategies, so we try to avoid mistakes that we've been through before. So I will try to get a copy of that resume, but I'm very concerned here because I certainly hope the manager's not looking for certain loyalty here, certain appointments of friends that were here. Now an appointment that, could the town council ever discipline him? Gee whiz, he was the guy that just hired my colleague's son-in-law. I take these issues very important because I can't remember any grievances in my 14 years I was sitting up there. Personnel issues are very important. Fear for jobs is very important. And you've got to recognize that, and you know about it, but you're not asking questions. So anyway, I will get a copy of the resume, but I do think something like this needs to be vetted in the very near future. I know he's been hired, but I don't know, reading the charter, if there's a dead period of time between when he's hired and when he actually takes his position in town hall. What is that period? I just can't quite see it referred to. So is he employed, but he's not working here, or is that kind of a timeout period between when he was hired and when he will be?
So we've entered into an employment contract, which is scheduled to begin on August 5th. So he is not yet an employee, but will be an employee when he shows up to work.
Okay, so then he's not officially a hiree. Could this be canceled, this hiring of this?
Mr. President, I have no intention of canceling this employment contract. I would like to address a couple of the points that Mr. O'Neill has brought up.
I can understand why you would. So, if you want to do that now or during your report.
Happy to do it during the report.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, but usually you don't take public comment during the manager's report, so I'd be happy to wait for that. I think that's next.
All right. Yeah, I think he can address those concerns. Was that the big concern?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Any comment up here at the table? Just to Mr. Traeger's point, I do think it might be in order for us to consider a resolution at some point to condemn some of the hateful remarks that we've seen emanating from our capital. I think, I don't know the quote exactly, but all that it takes for evil to triumph is for good people to remain silent. And certainly we need to condemn racism, bigotry in this country as it's growing in prevalence. So thank you for reminding us of that. And that brings us to the town manager's report.
Thank you. So let me begin, though, with a couple of items that aren't on the slide and won't be on the general report. The council has asked for updates on the status of the school building committee activities. The school building committee has met several times in the last couple of weeks and has recommended to the school committee that they hire a project manager for the large facilities, multi-year facilities program. The structure of that contract will be that the project manager will come in to review the Stage 2 application, will be part of reforming that Stage 2 application, will then be on after the Stage 2 application for all of the work associated with providing the public with information about the project as it evolves, and then being there as the manager for the construction of the project. The pricing that was initially requested of the offerors was that they break out the Stage 2 review and revision funds, and then that the second part of the contract be a percentage of the overall cost of the project. That contract recommendation went to the school committee and was approved last Friday. Mary Ann Crawford, Dr. Hicks, and I will sit down with the successful offeror in the next few days to begin nailing down exactly what the fee is going to be for this smaller chunk, and then make sure that we are in agreement on their larger fee proposal. I do want to take the opportunity to let the council know, with regard to this building height ordinance that the council reviewed tonight, Representative McEntee was actually phenomenal on this bill, making sure that we had information and were able to work with folks at CRMC and others who had interests in this legislation to make sure that the interests of South Kingstown were front and center in the presentation to the state legislature, and that what we got back met our needs and was the right legislation. It was really a wonderful relationship working with the folks in Providence, the folks on our planning board, CRMC. We really saw multiple levels of government working incredibly well on that bill, and I think that's worth noting, and my appreciation to everyone who was involved at the state and local level should be noted. Very quickly on the flag report, the hospital swap discussion, as I mentioned this morning, Terry Murphy and I were up in Congressman Langevin's office with representatives from Senator Reed's office and Senator White's House office, trying to make sure that we have the best presentation to the National Park Service. What we are trying to do here is work with the hospital to swap the 4-acre parcel of land that is adjacent to the hospital for a much larger park track elsewhere in town. And if we can do that, we're going to improve the park inventory substantially, and we're going to be able to help the hospital get land that they need for parking and expansion in and around their facility. The president of the hospital was up there with us this morning, and I think that we're all rowing in the right direction. We recognize that the long tent for this, or the long pole for this tent, is going to be the National Park Service. It's not going to be an easy request. The National Park Service takes very seriously the idea that once you've committed to not using a piece of land for anything but a park, it takes an awful lot to change from that particular piece of land to a different piece of land. We're going to try to convince them that we've got a better parcel that meets our needs and meets the hospital's needs, but we do not have an easy row to hoe. We will have the support of the state and the support of our congressional delegation as we move forward on that. One item that I want to just note, the Sustainability Committee had a very interesting presentation last week from the Good Energy and Green Energy Coalition groups. They came down to talk about municipal aggregation, and they had a very interesting presentation. I suspect that we're going to see something from the Sustainability recommending that the council consider putting together a municipal aggregation program here in South Kingstown. In a nutshell, municipal aggregation is essentially a means for bundling consumers so that you can go out into the electric market and sell that bundle of demand. The important thing that was noted during this presentation is that the utilities are tied to a very rigid schedule for their purchases, whereas aggregators are free to make purchases at any time during the year, which gives them an advantage when they go out into the marketplace seeking the best possible source price for energy. The promised savings were between 10 and 20%. We're obviously still looking into this, and we'll dig into it very deeply before we come to the council. But I thought it was a very promising meeting, and I just want to put that on your radar screen. These are some statistics. We were scheduled originally tonight to meet with the Public Housing Authority in a work session at 6 o'clock. That has been rescheduled for August 13th at 6 o'clock in this room. But I had put together some statistics from the Public Housing Authority, and these are there for your review. The important numbers are that 70 public housing units are owned by the South Kingstown Public Housing Authority, and the Housing Authority also manages 76 Section 8 vouchers here in South Kingstown. They also do 3 veterans vouchers so that they are in the process of helping on any given day 149 households here in South Kingstown. We have had some discussion here in town recently about the disappearing or where the boundary is, I guess, between the public access point on the beach and private property. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because it's a very complicated issue, but the main point is that the public has historically had the right to access the public beaches below the high water mark. That high water mark is measured on an 18-year average, and it changes as the average changes over time. So this is historically the area that folks have had the right to access, and above that is private property. The conflict comes when folks sort of want to camp out far north or far inland of the high water mark. They have the right to be everywhere else on the beach. Now, I'd like to turn to the questions on the hiring, and particularly the process that was used to decide on the hiring of a finance director here in town. An offer has been made to not only a highly qualified, but the most highly qualified candidate we interviewed for the finance director's job. Zach Saul is the former CFO of the state retirement plan, the state retirement effort here in Rhode Island, has worked with the municipalities which participate in that retirement fund, and is truly a impressive individual. I mean, you know, everybody who was on the interview team walked away from the interview saying, yeah, this guy's qualified. In fact, one of the folks that we had brought in from outside to serve on the interview team noted that she had offered him a job previously, that she had tried to hire him in the past. There was no doubt in my mind that we were getting the best qualified candidate for this position. There was nothing in my mind about trying to curry favor with anyone. My sole criterion for hiring a finance director was, is this person going to be the best finance director for the community that I can find in the marketplace today? The answer to that question was yes. Now, with regard to whether or not whether a ethics opinion was requested prior to the offer being made, the answer is yes. In fact, when it became apparent that one of the candidates had a relationship to someone in town government, to a member of the council, I immediately spoke to the town solicitor about whether or not that was a disqualifying factor. And it was not. I was advised that I should not speak to any member of council about qualifications, seek recommendations, parlay with anyone. I should make a decision based solely upon the candidate's qualifications, which I did. There was no discussion with any member of council about the qualifications of any of those candidates. That decision was made by me in consultation with the other people who sat on that interview board. There was no impropriety, and anyone who is concerned about that is free to look at the resume, look at the information that I can provide about the selection process, and talk to me. There really was absolutely no better candidate for us than Zach Saul. I am convinced that he is going to bring an energy, a professionalism, and a perspective to this job that are going to benefit us in ways that folks are going to be amazed by. This is not just a good team ad, this is a great team ad.
Any questions for the town manager? Could I just ask for an update sort of on the school facilities process, not being on the building committee? I'm wondering how that's progressing. We were thinking, as I recall, potentially going out to bond in spring. What are the timelines looking like?
So the school building committee has begun to think about the schedule. Now that we finally have a project manager for the small project, what we had been calling the summer construction project, now looking to be the fall construction project, and we have a project manager for the larger undertaking, as the state rules really require us to, we are looking at the schedule and asking, is what we've been advised to date really reasonable? And I can speak for myself. My sense of what folks around the school building committee table are thinking is that there's going to be some slippage. We are going to see the construction project for the vestibules and the parking lot work slip into the fall, and we are likely to see the larger project also slip some. To be honest with you, I think we are probably looking at the possibility of a submission, not in the fall, but the possibility of a submission of a Stage 2 application in the spring. Again, the committee has not made that recommendation. That recommendation is not, anything that I can make. It's going to be a decision by the school building committee, but I do think that there are serious reasons for us to think about making sure that the application is as good as it can be. Again, the OPM has just been hired. It is July 22nd. They're going to be on board fully, maybe this week, maybe next week. It gives them 6 weeks to review the Stage 2 application and make improvements to it. Whether 6 weeks is really going to be enough is questionable. It seems likely, if not probable, that there is more work to be done than can be done in that short period of time. Now, they may get in there, they may look at the work that's been done and say, you know what, actually it's a lot tighter than we thought. But even if you get to the point where the Stage 2 application is in fact ready to go on November 17th or 19th, still, there are questions about the bond referendum and the scheduling of a bond referendum. If you go in if you go in September and are approved in November, you have to have your referendum. You have to have your referendum under state regulation in the spring. There may be some advantage to waiting, making the application in the spring, and doing the referendum in the fall with larger voter turnout expected in the fall. There's more than just the quality and status of the application. There's some thinking about what's going on with regard to the bond, what's going on with regard to the referendum, what's going on in terms of the construction market. All of those are things that we now have a qualified project manager who can help us walk through and analyze. I'm very comfortable that now that we have someone on the job, or we'll soon have someone on the job who is 40 hours a week paying attention to our problems, we're going to be in a stronger position than we have been to this point.
So, Rob, I just have a question for clarification. The original Stage 2 app was, I believe, done by RGB?
That's correct, and the revisions to date have been done by RGB.
And it was my understanding that RGB was going to do the second submittal, but now you're saying that a new company will come in?
Well, what we will now do is we'll have this second company look at RGB's work and evaluate it with either a very fine-tooth comb or at least fine enough so that we can be sure that we've got a good application, that we're not going to get kicked back again. This is the second set of professional eyes that we're going to need to make sure that we've got a good application going in.
Can I speak to this as well? And to answer your question, it's RGB is still part of the process with the contract that they currently still have with the school committee that is going to bring us to the end of submitting Stage 2. What the state requires is that projects over a certain dollar amount, and it's new to the state of Rhode Island, but it's been done in other states for a long time, like Massachusetts, where you bring in an OPM to oversee the project. So basically, what's going to happen is that the group that we recommended to the school committee, I always trouble saying their name, Peregrine Group, I think is how you say it.
That's right.
We had 5 OPMs that we interviewed for this part of the project. A couple of them were previously interviewed for the smaller security and parking lot OPM. We left that meeting, or at that meeting, we realized that we had 2 really well-qualified companies. The other companies were well-qualified as well, but the 2 of them really stood out. And at the end of the day, a vote was made, and we decided to go with the Peregrine Group. And when we talk about this company or any of the companies, it's not just one person. They have the project manager, they have the executive manager. The particular group, Peregrine Group, has also brought in a media specialist or marketing specialist, I think is what it's called, and also someone to look at not just the physical, but also the programmatic of the developing space for our learners. So we're not bringing them in because they're replacing anyone. They might very well come back and say that we are good to go, but what we can't afford to do is to have another application denied by RIDE. So what could potentially happen when we let them do the deep dive in terms of also estimates, it's a big umbrella, but they're going to be going through everything from size to estimating to the list that was provided to us by RIDE with the issues or concerns that they had with the initial Stage 2 application. They may come back to us and say that they might, they could recommend that we push the Stage 2 to the next deadline.
Right.
And that's definitely a
I
possibility.
think the only clarification I was looking for is it was my understanding that RGB was handling the resubmittal, and now it looks like we're bringing in extra help.
That's correct. And I'll explain some of the financing on that because I think that's important. I think folks have had questions about it. RGB was hired on a contract to produce a successful Stage 2 application. That contract is the contract they're still operating under. There was a payment that was approved at the school committee last Friday night that raised some questions about whether or not there was additional compensation being provided to RGB. That was not the case. That contract payment last night was actually for incidental expenses. They had a fee, which they've essentially maxed out. I think there's $600 and some odd left on that contract. And there was an incidental expenses clause, photocopying, travel, whatever additional sort of costs they incurred while exercising or engaging in the contract. That was the payment made by the school committee on Friday. RIDE, when they got the Stage 2 application, said, look, this isn't what we're looking for, you need to make some revisions. We're going to give you a $150,000 grant to help you revise your Stage 2. Now, RGB has made the claim, the assertion, that much of what RIDE was looking for is actually Stage 3, not Stage 2 work. The school department is investigating whether or not that is true. One of the things that we're going to ask an OPM to do for us is determine whether or not it was Stage 2 done incompletely or Stage 3 work that really was beyond the contract that RGB had signed with the school department. That $150,000 should, in theory, be sufficient to pay for the OPM, the owner's project manager, for this revision, plus whatever actually turns out to be Stage 3 RGB work for this second phase. We do not expect the school department to incur additional costs because those costs should be covered by this $150,000 grant that RIDE made available to the community so that the revision could be made. That's still up in the air. We still need to figure out, what the OPM needs to put in terms of hours. We still need to figure out whether or not the assertion that most of this work is in fact not Stage 2 but is Stage 3 work is correct. Once we've got those two things, we'll know whether or not the $150,000 is sufficient to cover the additional costs associated with going from the original Stage 2 to the revised, improved Stage 2.
Rob, can you just, for the council, explain that for Stage 3, there's a whole new set of what it's going to cost, approximately?
That's correct. So Stage 1 is basically intent. We want to do something with our schools. Stage 2 is a detailed description of the work that you intend to do with cost estimates and square footage requirements and this sort of thing. Stage 3 is really a design piece. It's where you go beyond just the line drawings to actually designing the structures and the projects that you're going to prepare. Stage 2 has to be good enough so that you can move on to real design. And where we have sort of hit this question about whether it's Stage 2 or Stage 3 is RIDE seems to be concerned that the detail of the line drawings, the detail of the estimates so far are not sufficiently detailed so as to give you a good jumping off point for full design. But full design is the Stage 3. And it is not uncommon for a Stage 3 architect, engineering firm to come in and take over from that point forward. So there's a whole different thing.
What Rob's saying is that potentially we might make a recommendation that for Stage 3, it might be a different architectural firm and not RGB. Or we could make the recommendation that they continue on that path, but at that point...
The important thing to note is that it is a discrete step. It's discrete work and will be, in all likelihood, though I imagine there's a contracting mechanism whereby you could retain your current firm. It is common practice for Stage 3 to be let as a contract activity unto itself, that you go out to the market and you see who would be best for that discrete chunk of work, the architectural design and development work. That may be an opportunity for the community to get fresh eyes again on the project. It may very well be that if we go out to market, the school building committee and the school committee decide that RGB is the most qualified, the best offeror at that point, but it's a discrete element that does offer an opportunity for a new contracting action.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the town manager? All right, town solicitor's report.
Just quickly, wanted to give you a little update on where we are with the Matunic Beach Road RFP. So because the town utilized state monies to purchase that property, we needed the state also to approve of the RFP. When they liked it, except with regard to the public access easement, which is one of the documents that anyone who purchases it has to abide by. They wanted some changes to that. With the help of John Schock, we made the changes. We've submitted it back to the officials. We're waiting for their response. I assume we'll get it shortly, because the last email I read indicated they were going to get back to us. As soon as we get their sign-off, that RFP will go out. I have advised Bill Landry, who's the attorney for one of the applicants. They're aware of what's going on. Unless there are questions about anything else. Okay.
And then item 12 is appointments. We don't have any appointments to make tonight, but I'll use this opportunity to just say that there are a number of vacancies on our volunteer boards and commissions. So if you're at home watching and you're interested in getting involved in town governance and just a small baby step, you can dip your toe in the water with one of these committees. You just submit your application to our town clerk here in the clerk's office, and we're very gentle up here in our interview process. I noticed that the stewardship, Route 1 Scenic Stewardship Committee has not met yet. I know we're one person shy, but is it possible for them to start working before having a full contingent?
Hi all, good evening. Kayla Gray, I'm your interim planning director. I see no reason that the stewardship committee can't start meeting if we're short of an appointment on total, if we have a quorum so that it works. We've done that before with the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. When that was started a few years ago, we had a couple of meetings. Once we had a quorum of that committee, still bringing in the others, the understanding was that the work they would do at that point would be relatively minor, that they wouldn't make any major decisions until they had a full cohort, but it's certainly something we can do.
All right. Thank you. All right, and that brings us to item 13, new business. 13B is a resolution authorizing an award of bid to Hart Engineering Corporation of Cumberland for various improvements to the regional wastewater treatment facility, the Silver Lake Pump Station and Kingston Pump Station, for an amount not to exceed $2,464,000, including a $200,000 contingency, with authorization that $2,494,000 and any applicable contingency funds that may be used be advanced from the wastewater fund's unrestricted net assets for the subject improvements, with partial funding of $1,434,752 to be reimbursed by the regional partners. That's Narragansett for $720,780 and URI for $713,973, in addition to any contingency funds that may be used, and is further described in a memo from the Public Services Director to the Town Manager dated July 9th.
Mr. President, since this is a $2.4 million purchase, it might make sense for us to provide some explanation.
Good evening. John Schock, Public Services Director. So what's before the council for tonight for consideration is a culmination of a number of fiscal years of projects that we budget in the capital budget for. And now we've got the design done. We've gone out to bid for those projects, which are listed. I can go through them if any council has any questions. The low evaluated bidder is well qualified. It's Hart Engineering. They built the treatment plant back in the mid-'70s and have done at least 2 construction upgrades. Subsequent to that, we were very happy with them. So we're fortunate that they were the low evaluated bidder. Again, similar to when we do our capital budget presentation, the core centers, depending upon what component they are split between the 3 regional partners. For the treatment plant, Silver Lake Pump Station, Kingston Pump Station is only split between the university and the town because there's no Narragansett flow that goes through those 2 facilities. So I can answer any questions the council may have.
Any questions for John?
Oh, your memo is pretty detailed.
Very good. Do I hear a motion on 13B then?
Motion to approve 13B as presented.
Second.
So moved. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 That motion carries. 13C is a resolution authorizing an award of bid to Coastal International Trucks of O'Keefe Lane in Warwick for a 2020 International HV 607 dump truck with Heel Duraclass dump body and Viking snowplow in an amount not to exceed $159,264. Further described in a memo from the Public Services Director to the Town Manager, July 13th, 2019.
This is one of our 9 six-wheel dump trucks scheduled for replacement. Coastal International is the low bidder that meets specifications. Fortunately, we're under bid under what we have budgeted for a change, which is kind of nice. We got $185,000 budgeted, and it came in at $159,264.
Not bad. Do I hear a motion? Or question?
No, well, I'll make a motion so I can ask a question. Motion to approve 13C.
Second.
So moved.
John, so just a couple of questions. One, the new truck is a stainless body,
Correct.
but that doesn't solve the issue with the truck that we're replacing was very low miles, had a lot of body damage or rot. Also frame and wiring. Is there anything we can do to...
We actually have begun that. There's a product that, I guess my analogy is Cosmoline, that they used during the war. So anytime a new, because this is a very corrosive environment with the snow.
Right.
Anytime we get a new vehicle, we put it up on the lift and we spray the whole undercarriage, fuel lines, brake lines. We try to do as much as we can.
Right.
When we purchase a vehicle, and then after every storm, we wash the vehicles down, including the undercarriage. So they are very low mileage. It is a very corrosive environment. We try to do the best we can to get as much longevity out of the trucks.
And then to that point also, I noticed the trade-in allowances. This was the best allowance for trade, but the trade-in allowance is very low. Is there a possibility that we could do better keeping the truck and trying to sell it?
We have used Muni bid as an auction. I mean, that is an option. You roll the dice. If we can get a price that's better than $7,000 or thereabouts.
Well, yeah, I hesitate a little because it was the best trade-in allowance,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it would seem that a $158,000 truck...
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It is a very, very corrosive environment. The stainless bodies have made a big improvement.
Right.
But it's still the undercarriage. We try the best we can to keep them from rusting.
So John, I would assume that the truck gets traded in, and they rebuild the truck somehow, or what do they do at that point?
I think they probably try to, I don't want to speak for the vendor, but I think they probably try to find like a farm or something like that where, it can be used off-road use and not on the road.
Yeah.
So it's got a pretty limited
Yeah.
use once we're done with it. And again, we've fortunately got a very good maintenance staff. We have a very good mechanic that deals with these. It's just, again, it's a very, very corrosive environment.
Just so I'm clear, this is replacing a 2006 vehicle, so the vehicle may have low mileage,
Right.
but it's 13 years old, correct? Am I correct? Okay.
So again, with our dump trucks, primarily we do use them for hauling sweeping spoils to the landfill, but primarily if you go up to the highway garage tomorrow, most of the fleet's sitting there, it's for snow removal. The city of New York, for example, they use garbage trucks for snow removal. We don't have that luxury. So we are kind of hamstrung because we do use these trucks primarily for winter storm response.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries. 13D is a resolution authorizing an award of bid to Safety Marking of Bridgeport, Connecticut for municipal road striping marking services at unit prices bid and further described in a memo from the Public Services Director, the Town Manager, dated July 15th, 2019.
Pretty specialized service.
Yeah. Do I hear a motion on this one?
I'll make a motion to approve item 13D as presented.
Second.
So moved. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And that motion carries, and it brings us to the end of tonight's public agenda. We are going to move into closed executive session, so I'll have to ask you all to leave, unfortunately. Please come back again. See you the next time. And I need a motion.
To move into closed executive session pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42-465A1 to discuss matters pertaining to personnel. Robert Zarnetsky, Town Manager.
Second.
So moved. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
You can go into the